Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Have you guys seen the story about a Spanish submarine expert, a guy called Jose Luis Martin, who suggested that the submersible lost stability due to an electrical failure? This then left it without propulsion, and then it fell downwards toward the seabed, in his words, like an arrow vertically, with its porthole facing down. And so, according to this expert, the sub free fell at a depth of around 5,600 feet, like a stone, with no control, fell for another 3,000 feet until about 8,600 feet, and then popped like a balloon because of the rapidly changing pressure. I've seen that expert quoted in British media, Australian media, and in a New Zealand publication. I was just wondering what you guys think about it. According to Martin, he suggested that the passengers would have been piled on top of each other in terrifying total darkness throughout the fall, which he says may have lasted between 48 and 71 seconds, basically about a minute. I'll put a link to the Daily Mail article in the description, but it basically reinforces his story, where it sort of concludes saying the Titan submersible lost communications with its support vessel on Sunday, June 18, during a descent to the wreck of the Titanic 12,500 feet beneath the surface. I don't know about you, but when I read these headlines and I sort of glossed through this expert's version of events, I couldn't help frowning and then rolling my eyes.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
If this isn't what happened, what did happen? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Welcome to the thousands of new subscribers. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. If you ask me, there's quite a lot wrong with the story you've just heard. If you've been paying attention, you know the vessel aborted its descent, dropped its ballast, and was on the way up. It was ascending when there was a simultaneous loss of communication and navigation. This expert doesn't seem to be aware of that. And the media publishing his expert analysis don't seem to be aware of it either.
And they probably had warning that their hull was starting to delaminate, starting to crack. It's our belief, we understand from inside the community, that they had dropped their ascent weights and they were coming up trying to manage an emergency.
I couldn't think of any other scenario in which a sub would be lost where it lost comms and navigation at the same time and stayed out of touch and did not surface. I was also told, and I don't have confirmation on this, that they were on descent, they were a couple hundred meters above the seafloor, and they dropped their weights. Now, the only way for the ship to know that they had dropped their ascent weights, which would be an emergency abort, is if they had called that in, that they were ascending. So I believe now that they had some warning, that they heard some acoustic signature of the hull beginning to delaminate. An investigation will hopefully eventually show what did happen, because we all need to know.
If we review the way the speculation has evolved, do you remember how it happened? First, they died instantly. Then banging noises meant they were still alive, possibly on the seabed. Then, and I think this is currently the favored version, they were ascending for 20 minutes in a sort of slow motion horror movie when it imploded. And that's via the quote-unquote transcript as a source. And then there's this fourth version, perhaps the most dramatic yet, of the occupants piled on top of each other. And I think that is very unlikely. What's more likely is the implosion occurred after Stockton Rush's patented monitoring system alerted them to a crack in the hull. You've just heard James Cameron saying that. And so they alerted, they tried to ascend, and then the hull delaminated beyond a point of no return. How long the crew knew they were in mortal peril, as far as I'm concerned, is unknown. But I do think they saw the writing on the wall. They did know what was coming before the lights went out, which is not how Stockton or PH imagined it would be. One way to know for sure what this period was from alert alarm to implosion is to look at the time that a transmission was sent indicating their intention to abort and the time Navy sensors picked up an implosion. According to the Washington Post, quote, a senior Navy official said in a statement Thursday evening that the service conducted an analysis of acoustic data and detected an anomaly consistent with an implosion or explosion in the general vicinity of where the Titan was operating when it stopped communicating. End quote. Now, on paper, this acoustic anomaly would simply be a single thin line on a vast page. And what's quite interesting is they released the statement Thursday evening, even though they'd actually heard it Sunday morning. Going back to the article, quote, U.S. Navy acoustic sensors detected the likely implosion of the Titan submersible hours after the vessel began its fatal descent on Sunday, U.S. Navy officials said Thursday. And so the question is, how many hours? How many hours after it began its fatal descent did this happen? Well, we know the ship lost contact just 1 hour, 45 minutes after launch. Did the communication and navigation failure coincide with an implosion? That's what we have been led to believe by James Cameron's, the community that he's part of. And I do think it is a logical assumption at this point that shortly after this, we don't know exactly how long, that is when it happened. But the point being, the crew unfortunately did know likely what was about to happen. I'm not going to take it further than that, except to say that I still have to talk about one member of the crew that we haven't spoken about yet, and that is the British billionaire Hamish Harding. And so I will be covering his story in a way alongside that of Stockton Rush's story in the next couple of episodes. I've also been meaning to do a comparison between the Titan submersible scenario and the 96 Everest disaster, and then also the Rust incident. So hopefully I'll be able to get around to that sooner rather than later. In terms of the Virgin Galactic story, that definitely does have a bearing on this story as well. Did you know that the first successful commercial launch of Virgin Galactic was less than 2 weeks after the Titan's fatal implosion? And some people were kind of worrying about it, basically saying, are we dealing with a similar situation? Bravado, hubris, the wrong kind of materials, right? And so that's also kind of quite an interesting conversation. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.